in order for change to happen, sometimes a lot of pain has to come to the surface. In order for us to be able to move to the next chapter, you got to finish the first chapter. And that was our sort of farewell week.
Literally looking at everything going, oh my gosh, like, oh, this blanket I missed. That hat was so funny. Just taking it all in.
We always saw Archie running around the garden at Frogmore Cottage. It was all part of our future, and everything changed really, really quickly.
That last week was bittersweet.
The last time I've mentioned Frogmore Cottage on this channel was to discuss Harry and Meghan's farewell tour in 2020. And of course, when they relinquished the property and all of the drama that has happened since then, I've pretty much just ignored because it didn't really pertain to Harry and Meghan. It was the royal family's one-sided fight with Harry and Meghan because they were using the property to continue to rope them into headlines, nonsensical, ridiculous headlines. Harry and Meghan paid back the money for the renovations. They moved on with their lives. They have an amazing home in Montecito. All of the things that have happened since then have not really moved the needle for me. But today, I read an article in Feminegra that really stuck out, especially since I haven't talked about Frogmore Cottage that much. And even when there was quote unquote drama in the headlines about it, it really didn't pertain to anything that I like to cover because Harry and Meghan had already done everything they were going to do with the property. They responded in a very professional way. They have been more than fair than any reasonable couple should ever have to be, especially when they foot the bill for the reno. There's so much that could be said. I just felt like we have so much other stuff to talk about with Harry and Meghan. To hell with that property. They said goodbye. We watched it on camera, which is why I wanted to open the video with that. And as far as I was concerned, the only royal property I'm concerned about is in Montecito. But this article in Feminegra pointed out something very important that continues to illustrate the point that the royals and their media hounds love making these hypocritical arguments regarding the Sussexes and driving up this outrage about anything pertaining to the Sussexes, hell, anything in proximity to the Sussexes. But in actuality, people do not care about the royals, their property, their protocols, or anything else. They were using those quote unquote talking points when really they were just ways to abuse a woman. But they were using those talking points as a way to exorcise their racist and misogynistic demons that they have towards all women of color, all Black people. And they found one convenient scapegoat in Meghan. And so now all of a sudden they're royal warriors and they want to argue about protocols that they weren't even familiar with 5 minutes before they picked up a microphone. And they want to argue about properties that the royals shouldn't even be having to begin with because they have so many properties, yet they claim to care about homelessness. And they care all about the length of the hem and the nail polish, etc. Yet when people copy Meghan, that outrage is no longer there. And then all of a sudden they cared about avocados, and avocados was a big deal because Meghan was leading to nothing because it was literally food. And when Kate was getting avocados, which that story was made up, William wouldn't bring her ass no avocado. First of all, they don't even shop for their own food. So where would William even find an avocado? If one fell and hit him in the head, he probably didn't even know where the hell it came from. They don't prepare their own food, nor do their own shopping. That's beside the point. Any opportunity those bloodhounds have to implicate Meghan and Harry in any kind of drama, they take it. And Frogmore Cottage is no different. However, as Feminegra brilliantly points out, Frogmore is about to go through possibly another renovation where it's going to be divided up into smaller properties. And no one is saying a peep about it because Harry and Meghan aren't involved. That's why. We've got a lot to get into. I'm going to share my thoughts at the end, so let's get started. Thank you so much for clicking on my video, and if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll be taking a look at an article in Feminegra discussing Frogmore Cottage and the potential upcoming renovations and changes that will be happening at this very famous property, and why the media is suddenly very mum about it. I already told you in the intro, but if you want to stick around, please do. Let's continue the discussion. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share so that more people can find us. Once again, this article is in Feminegra, written by my fave, Miss Historian, and it's titled, Frogmore Cottage May Be Renovated Again. So where is the taxpayer outrage now? Oh, look, Frogmore Cottage is back in the news. And wouldn't you know it, the same press that spent years screaming about Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex's luxury renovation is now treating a potential second round of work as just another day at the palace. So to recap, Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, were hounded, vilified, and turned into national villains over a £2.4 million refurbishment, a cost that they repaid in full, unlike other royals. Now, reports suggest that that same property may be renovated again, possibly subdivided back into multiple units, and the media's response is crickets. Or worse, gleeful framing about erasing traces of the Sussexes. Where is the taxpayer outrage now? Or better still, where are the headlines demanding answers about royal property waste? Where is the fury over an empty Grade 2 listed house sitting unused while Britain faces a housing crisis and royal properties continue to sit empty? Right, I forgot. The outrage was only reserved for the Sussexes. It was never about the money. Let's start with what the tabloids never told you. Frogmore Cottage, nestled in Windsor Castle's home park, was not some pristine palace that Harry and Meghan trashed with expensive wallpaper. According to the official royal accounts, and quoted by Sky News, the £2.4 million renovation consisted of 5 units that were in poor condition. The building was already a mess. The Sussexes turned it into a single-family home, which they needed because they had just gotten married and were expected to use it as their official UK base and expanding family. While the press made renovation out to seem like a vanity project, it was actually basic royal housekeeping. I also want to pause here. I also remember at the height of this, when things were still kind of fresh and new, like when I wasn't really sure what was going on, I always felt like the media and every other public correspondent would be skewed against Meghan in some way because I'm a Black woman. I know how racism works. I know how misogyny works. Thereby, I know how misogynoir works. So I always knew that would be working against her. But these claims were so outrageous and so crazy. I was like, where is this coming from? As someone who used to, long before this, but used to believe almost every joke or comment or exaggeration has to have a grain of truth, right? Hell no. These people will pull something out of thin air and then go with it. And then the rest of the rota will then expound upon that and make up their own details. It's the most wicked case of phone tag or telephone I've ever seen. And so this is another example of that, because I remember at the height of this, when I didn't really know what was going on, that there were reports that Meghan was building a floating yoga stage and had built out one of the rooms as not only a yoga room, which actually a lot of homes have now, like a fitness room, but a floating yoga stage that when she stepped on it, I feel silly even repeating this because even at the time I said, now wait a minute. That sounds crazy. But a yoga stage that was activated when she stepped on it and would lift off the ground with lights, and she would, do yoga on this yoga stage that would essentially be spinning her into midair in a room with 20-foot ceilings. So imagine my surprise when I actually started seeing photos of actual Frogmore Cottage, and I'm like, it's just a house, a big house. But this is not an auditorium. This is not a sound stage. This is a house. And they had made, and what I learned later when I put the pieces together, I don't know if you guys remember, but Kanye West had a concert at the time that I was seeing this. I feel like was it The Life of Pablo? I don't remember. It was one of the concerts where he debuted that floating stage that would fly across the concert venue, and it was lit at the bottom. And I said, wait a minute, where's that article? I literally had to search for hours, but I finally tracked it down because it had been buried by even worse articles since that point. But I tracked it down and I pulled that article and realized the person who wrote this article about this quote unquote floating yoga stage suspended in midair that Meghan just had to have, that was also, what else did they say? It had marble. There was so many claims in that one. And then there were more that spawned from it. So I might be mixing up the details, but I remember going back to the original and realizing I think they were trying to describe Kanye's floating concert stage, a performance stage for her home. And that's when I said, this is crazy. They are putting that woman through the ringer. That was when it really hit me how far they were going. Up until that point, there was some kind of, they were holding back a little bit. But when I saw that article, I said, that sounds insane. I've heard of yoga stages, yes, and I've heard of yoga rooms and all the, but the way they, put this picture together was that Meghan had a full-on performance area for yoga. Okay. And then it's so funny. It's not funny, haha, but just kind of crazy. When you see Harry and Meghan, the docuseries, you actually see Meghan in moments where she's meditating, and you see Meghan in moments where she is doing yoga, and you see Meghan in these moments. There's also full-on photography of Meghan doing yoga, but because she used yoga as a photo shoot once, or she did yoga in a photo shoot, excuse me. And so when you see the Harry and Meghan docuseries and you actually see her doing meditation and yoga, and you're like, she's just doing it like everybody else, like she always did. She's not demanding this performance area. Where the hell did that come from? But I also want to point out, when you can afford to do it yourself, you can do whatever the hell you want to with your home or anything else. When you're footing the bill, you can do whatever you want to. And just like I said, maybe there is a small opportunity for criticism if someone is using taxpayer funded money to do exorbitant upgrades and renovations that no normal family would need. But to that argument, I say, this isn't a normal family. So even if their renovations seem crazy to you or I, you have to keep in mind this isn't a normal family. And you also have to consider environment. In their world, for who they are, and in their environment, are their upgrades, renovations, and asks all that odd? Are they really that exorbitant? No, because you have to consider who you're talking about. For you and I, if I were to do $1,000 wallpaper in my little condo, then that might sound crazy. But if I were to do $1,000 wallpaper in my McMansion, that might not sound so crazy to you. So you still have to consider the environment and the person you're discussing. And that's just an example. I'm not saying they use the $1,000 wallpaper. I'm just saying, if you were to criticize what someone else does with a property that belongs to them, you have to ask yourself a number of filtering questions before you can even get to the small grain of criticism to begin with. If these people are doing something that seems astronomical to you, you have to keep in mind, the only reason I know about it is because these aren't ordinary people. Do I know what Sally, Sue, May, and Pat and Patrick are doing down the hallway or down the street? No. I don't even know what my neighbors are doing, because they're regular people and everything they do isn't passing through the hands of the media who are already skewed against them. So even when you find out something, like me, when I heard about that yoga stage, I questioned it immediately. Not because I haven't heard of a yoga stage before, but because why would that even be in the news? Who would she tell about that? Who shared that with them? I'm pretty sure, just like other public figures and celebrities, when you are entering the personal home of a royal or anyone else, you would have to sign some kind of privacy waiver or some kind of NDA. So even if you were given privileged access to that information, who would you tell about it without fear of being sued? For this very reason, because people will take some small information and turn it into something else. Hell, they could have just been installing flooring. There could have been a hole in the floor, and that turned into a yoga stage. But I also want to go back to the main point that I was making. Even if there is criticism to be had, you have to consider the environment for their world, for their needs, for their lifestyle, and for their environment. What are their norms? And according to their norms, is what they are doing that outrageous? So whatever information you come across, whether it's the height of the door, the type of security system, the type of fence they get, ask yourself, before I criticize, because that sounds astronomical and that's too expensive, ask yourself, is it really, considering who they are, their world, and their environment? Probably not. A lot of the issues that people come across when they are so busy focusing on others and so busy criticizing others, or even just taking scale of what someone else is doing, and I'll reserve judgment till later. Whenever you're just taking it all in, please don't forget to check yourself at the door when you're doing that and ask yourself, one, why do I care what these people are doing in their private home that they can undoubtedly pay for if they wanted to, which eventually we saw that they could, and they did. But two, if what they are doing matters to them and it doesn't impact me or anyone else in a negative way, why am I bothering to criticize it? I'm going to take it way back. We're going to take the heat off Harry and Meghan right now, and I'm going to put it primarily on myself, okay? I have a knack for decorating. I love to decorate. No matter where I am. I decorated my dorms, knowing I was going to move out in 6 months. I've decorated every single apartment I've lived in. I always used to decorate my room. My mom used to love letting me go crazy with being creative. And so I still do that. I feel like decorating your home, for me, not for everybody, but for me, it's essential to my mental health. I like to feel relaxed and serene and at peace. And when my creativity is allowed to soar in a space, I feel safe and I feel at home and I enjoy it. I just flat out enjoy decorating. So when I move into apartments, when I would move into condos, when we lived in our townhome, I'm going to decorate the space, whether we're there for a year or 5 years or 10 years. It's going to get decorated because guess what? Whenever we leave and we want to remove all this stuff, we're taking it with us. And for the things that can't come with us, we can always pay to have it put back. And that's it. And that also puts money into the city or puts money into the environment because you're paying people to paint these walls back white and you're paying people to remove that doorknob and put the old one back in. Paying people to change out the shower heads. I change out everything. Okay. But I always have done that. And I had family come visit me one time. And I was in the middle of a project. So I was like, this wall is half painted. And so it's going to be this. And I was explaining to him what I was about to do. I was like, this is not going to stay like this, but I've painted everything else, but this one is still in progress. And so we're chatting and having fun. And these people, this couple looked at me and said, are you going to buy this? So why are you painting it? And it wasn't even like a question. It wasn't a full-on attack. It wasn't even like, well, if you're not going to buy it, why do you bother painting? That's a fair question. And I always just say, because paint cans cost $10. And just like this teal paint can costs $9.99, the white paint can actually costs $4.99. So it's going to cost me even less to put it back. And look, I didn't even break $20 and I still had fun for a whole year. Everybody wins, but they didn't ask. They charged at me. Well, why are you painting if you ain't even gonna live here forever? Mind you, I had leased the place for 3 years because we knew that the work contract we were under would be 3 years. So we leased it for 3 whole years. We knew that out the gate. It was what it was. But I was so surprised by that attack. And I remember my first thought was, one, watch your tone. Watch how you talk to me. And then my second question was, why do you care what I come home to? Whether I own it or not, I still want to enjoy the space. Whether I bought this place and sold it in 3 years, or I leased this place because I knew I was leaving in 3 years, regardless of where you stand, why is it upsetting you to this degree? And that was my first experience with a hostile, none of your business encounter, especially for people who it's not going to impact you one way or the other. I could tell if I was using lead paint. Hell yeah, shake some sense into me. But this plain old paint is not bothering anybody. And they were so outraged. And it was even funnier because they actually did own they financed their home and they were still paying it off, but it was theirs. They owned it. And I was so surprised because I was like, I even know people who own their homes and haven't decorated. And it was crazy because they were those people. They'd owned their home for well over 2 decades and their house was a mess all the time. And I used to be like, my goodness, I mean, whether you own it or not, do you not want the space to be peaceful? Maybe we have different priorities and that's okay. Ownership is a priority, but I have a timeline that has nothing to do with a $10 can of paint. So people will complain about a fictional floating yoga stage or a $10 can of Behr paint. People will complain and don't try to make sense of it. People have nothing else going on in their lives. They're looking for something to be mad about. So when I say, even if this is a big if because it wasn't true, but I'm saying even if that outrageous yoga stage that they described was true, my question is, why do you care? Why do you care? It's not bothering anyone. I used to have a neighbor who used to come over and update was it my mom or my grandma? She would come over there with her coffee and cigarettes every morning and she would update us on what was going on in the neighborhood. And I used to sit in the window. They would be on the back porch. I would sit in the window in the kitchen eating my cereal and just get an update on everybody. I was very nosy. And she was back there talking and she was like, yeah, they putting the garage in out there when they really need to be digging a ditch. They need a ditch out back because they filled the last one that was up there. Now we got a big drainage issue. So they need and she was just going on and on. And then another one, she was like, they're getting sprinkler heads fixed every week. You need to just take it out and put it back in. Put a new one. Mind you, this woman's house looked like if the wind blew 2 inches to the left, her house was going to topple over. But she had so much mouth for everyone else. That is who you're arguing with on the internet when you are mad about somebody knowing their business or getting into other people's business. It's that lady with her coffee and cigarettes, except now she doesn't have to walk up the street to talk to my grandma or my mom. She can just pull out her phone and grab her big bifocals and go to town in that comment section. Some people just don't have nothing else going on, and they will find something to complain about. Because why does Miss Pearl's daisies in her yard bother you? Because everybody else on her side of the block has roses. Her daisies are not bothering you. It's a nice pop of color. Anyway, let's continue. The tabloids didn't report it that way. They screamed about a gold-plated tap, which was never proven, luxury upgrades, which were exaggerated, and taxpayer waste, ignoring that the sovereign grant covers royal properties anyway. And even after Prince Harry wrote a check repaying the full £2.4 million, which the palace confirmed, the smear still stuck. Once a Black American woman was attached to a cost, the press needed to pocket watch every cent. Why does a property that was just renovated and paid back need more money spent on it? If the original refurbishment was such a terrible waste, why would the palace now consider additional expense to undo it? Wouldn't it be cheaper to leave it alone? Or is the goal not financial prudence, but something else entirely? The press predictably has its own answer. The headlines write themselves, quote, final traces of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to be wiped from Frogmore Cottage, as if the cottage is a crime scene and Meghan is the stain. It's interesting that she would say that because there are royal properties that are literal crime scenes and their actual criminals are still living there. And the press has nothing to say about them. Hey, Andrew. That framing tells you everything. This isn't about brick and mortar. It's about erasure. Remember, Prince Harry and Meghan were asked to vacate Frogmore in 2023, publicly, by the way. That's how you know the royal family is petty as hell. They wanted to make sure all of that was in the public news. It was so messy. And I love how classy Harry and Meghan were about the whole thing and how they maintained their dignity throughout the whole thing. I expect nothing less from them. They're such a great example of what royalty should really look like. Remember, Harry and Meghan were asked to vacate Frogmore in 2023, shortly after Spare was published. The eviction came from King Charles himself, and it meant that Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet no longer had a secure place to stay in the UK. This is the same King Charles who royal sources constantly tell the public is desperate to see his grandchildren. Mind you, King Charles was just in America for a couple of days, and he did not hop, skip, or jump his ass over to California to see those grandkids he so desperately wants to see. So he can kill that noise. The same king who allegedly wants to heal the rift, and yet he removed their only home. You cannot simultaneously evict someone and then complain that they don't visit. You know, it's the same logic of people who will talk shit about you and then be like, she don't call no more because you gossip about me. Again, I feel like the theme of today's video is check yourself. Anyway, but the press never makes that connection. Instead, they frame the eviction as righteous punishment and the potential renovation as a ceremonial cleansing. It's breathtaking in its lack of self-awareness. Here's where the double standard becomes truly grotesque. After Prince Harry and Meghan were forced out, Frogmore Cottage was reportedly offered to Prince Andrew. Yes, that Prince Andrew, as part of attempts to move him from Royal Lodge. Andrew, who settled a civil sexual assault lawsuit, who was stripped of his royal patronages, who is arguably the biggest liability to the monarchy in modern history, rejected the property. So let me understand this. Harry and Meghan, who served the monarchy for years, who have never been accused of any crime, who repaid their renovation costs, they were evicted. Andrew, who paid millions to settle a lawsuit, who was photographed at Epstein's house, who the public rightly despises, he was offered the same home and said no thanks. Also, Andrew had Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell all at royal properties. The Queen's, I can't remember which property it was. Was it the one in Sandringham? Y'all let me know which property was it, but I remember it was them sitting on the porch of one of the Queen's properties. Andrew is a liability no matter how you slice it. And the press is still writing about erasing traces of Meghan from Frogmore? Where are the headlines about Andrew's housing demands? Where is the taxpayer outrage over a man who no longer performs royal duties, living rent-free in a 30-room mansion while veterans struggle? Oh, right. That doesn't sell papers. Meghan sells papers. Here's what the royal press won't ask. If Frogmore was so terribly renovated that it now needs more work, why wasn't the original project done properly? Who signed off on it? Who is responsible for the waste? If the property has been empty for years, why wasn't it used for houseless veterans or NHS housing or anything useful? If the goal is to subdivide it again, who is going to pay for that? Will the sovereign? Will the sovereign grant cover it? Will taxpayers be asked to fund the undoing of a renovation that was already paid back? And most importantly, why is the media more interested in symbolic revenge against Meghan than in holding the palace accountable for its own property mismanagement? We all know the answer. It's misogyny, racism, and the same hate industrial complex that feeds on every breath Meghan takes. They can repaint the walls and subdivide the rooms. They can pretend Frogmore has been restored to some pure pre-Sussex state. The headlines about wiping traces or erasing the past fit perfectly into the royal press playbook. Treating the property like a crime scene, with Meghan cast as the culprit, is a role they have already mastered. But here is the problem for them. No matter how many royal reporters join the character smear campaign, and no matter how hard they try to turn Frogmore into a symbolic erasure project, they cannot renovate Meghan out of royal history because Archie remains in the line of succession. Lilibet carries the late queen's name. The marriage certificate exists. The wedding happened, and the world watched it unfold.
There was always a sense that Meghan had to prove herself worthy of Britain, prove herself worthy of her husband, prove herself worthy of her position in the royal family. It's a lot to ask of any individual.
The British public opinion is that it's all Meghan's fault.
Frogmore may change again. The press may move on to the next manufactured scandal, but the double standard remains. Harry and Meghan were punished over a renovation they paid back. Andrew was offered the same home, and somehow the outrage has disappeared. We see it, we remember, and we are not buying the spin.
I've seen little cartoons of me on all fours with her holding a dog lead and me wearing the dog collar. How predictable that, the woman is to be blamed for the decision of a couple. In fact, it was my decision. She never asked to leave. I was the one that had to see it for myself.
Thank you so much for watching the SharionSade YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching my content. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video by hitting the thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to comment along the way. If you feel so inclined, please don't forget to share so that more people can find us. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Now let's get back to the video. It's so disappointing to see that after all this time, after all these years, not even the 6 years since they've stepped back, but for the many years prior to them stepping back, the things that helped lead up to them stepping back in the first place, that nonsense is still going on and still going strong. And I appreciate Feminagra for pointing out, all of a sudden, the magnifying glass that was hovering over all things Frogmore Cottage when it had some association to the Sussexes, now that magnifying glass is gone. Meanwhile, right up the way in another royal property lies a whole criminal, not a person who once committed a crime, an actual repeat offender, literally, in every sense of the term. Not only is he a repeat offender, not only has he had to pay out a settlement because of his offenses, because of the R word, because not only does he have bodies on his conscience, if he had a conscience, but the fact that he is still acquiring new accusers all the time. There are new allegations coming out about Andrew this year alone. So the fact that they aren't worried about the criminal in their midst, but they're worried about a renovation tells you everything you need to know about their damn priorities. Pedophilia, okay. Being black is not. That's disgusting. And every time one of them raises a stinking ass green tinted breath to speak ill on Meghan's name, we should all just turn around and say, "You're racist." I don't care what you're going to say. You could say Meghan with a scowl and you're racist, because she's done nothing to deserve the criticism or the ridicule or the mistreatment or the abuse. She's done absolutely nothing. Not only has she not done anything, she's done a lot of really great things, a lot of wonderful things, a lot of above par things for the world around her, and then some. And she still gets this kind of hate. One of the things about Harry and Meghan, the docuseries, that I really appreciate is that they showed us part of her meditation, and some of the affirmations and some of the things that were being said to her were so true. The picture and the caricature of you that's being painted in the media is not real. That is not real. That is not who you are. And I love knowing that she is consistently reaffirming herself in that, and she's staying grounded in truth. I didn't doubt it for a second, but it was wonderful to see that play out on camera, because that is true. The caricature and this evil villainous monster that they keep trying to paint of Meghan is not real. And every single day, that picture gets more, that veil gets more and more thin, and it becomes more and more sheer. We can see right through it. Some of us have already seen through it. Some of us have lived something similar. Not as bad, my God. I mean, I still don't understand how she survived that, but I'm grateful that she did. My goodness. But to have a lot of people coming at you like that That's not for the faint of heart. Hell, that's not for anybody, because that's not supposed to be how that goes. If someone has done something truly heinous, if somebody has done something truly wrong, then there is a way to go about bringing about justice. Meghan hasn't done anything, though. Who should be condemned and who we should be bringing about justice on, the other royal, Andrew, he's just skating by, living his best life, feet propped up, living on your dime for those of you in the UK. He doesn't have to do a damn thing he doesn't want to, and he lives in a 30-room mansion that no one is asking about. Mind you, there were allegations that he was taking some money from some very serious people in order to pay Charles for that property, in order to renovate that property, and in order to upkeep that property, allegedly. I want people digging into that. I want people questioning that. We need to question why William and Kate were on some very interesting ships during their vacation last year. We need to question that. Why were y'all on those yachts with those people? What were y'all doing? What was the exchange? Those are the questions that need to be answered. The people who you're still funding are the people who should have to answer to you. But that's me. Call me crazy. I just expect a little bit of logic. So that's all I have for y'all today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share so that more people can find us. And I will see y'all next time. Bye.
Megxit.
I felt the term Megxit was just indicative of the frivolousness, the unseriousness, the flippant nature of the tabloid press. It's what happens when you have a press that is devoid of journalism, that lives on outrage and monetizes anger.
But it's misogyny at its best.